Women always have to put up a fight.
Welcome to Chiller Thriller, also known as Horror for Scared People. My name is Riley, and I am here to hold your hand and walk you through horror movies if you find yourself interested in them, but not feeling brave enough to get into the nitty-gritty on your own. No judgment here. Today we are taking a look at Revenge, a French movie written and directed by Caroline Farguet. I hope I said that right. I took 2 years of French in middle school. Did not stick. This was another first watch for me, and it is a doozy. I'm gonna give a blatant warning right up top that this is a rape revenge movie, and as such there is a pretty graphic rape scene early on in the movie. Truthfully, I could count on one hand the number of rape revenge movies I've actually seen, but it is my understanding that this one, the rape scene itself, lingers a lot less than they often can in other movies like I Spit on Your Grave, for example. I don't know if that puts your mind at ease at all, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I was really blown away by Revenge, and it's one that's been on my radar since I first got Shudder in like 2017, and I just never carved out the time to watch it, which was a shame because I loved this a lot. But before I get too far ahead of myself dumping praise on this movie, there is the small matter of jump scares and their timestamps, which I will roll now. But as I mentioned before, this movie is heavy, so there's a lot more than jump scares to be worried about here. Of course, big content warning for rape, but once we get past the first 30 minutes of this movie, all the content warnings are primarily blood, gore, and guts. But if there is anything more specific you're worried about coming across in this movie, stick around because we're about to dive into all of it after we run those timestamps here. Welcome to Spoiler Town. I almost immediately knew that Revenge was very much gonna be my shit when I was clutching my chest and yelling, "Oh shit," minutes into it starting. I mean, look at this shot. First, however, it is time to meet our main characters, Jen, played by the amazing Matilda Lutz, and her boyfriend Richard, as they arrive in this ridiculously beautiful house situated somewhere in the desert. Upon landing, the man flying the helicopter gives Richard a little baggie of what I will lovingly refer to as Chekhov's peyote. But they would love for you to forget about that peyote, at least for a little bit, because these two are pretty instantly having steamy sex. Moments after this, though, we learn through a phone call that Richard is in fact a married man, and judging by the baby cries we can hear in the background, he is a father as well.
Salut ma chérie, tout va bien à la maison?
In the moment, I wrote down a content warning for the way that he says,
"Where's that little peachy ass of mine? Little juicy peachy ass."
because it is so off-putting, language barrier or not. I actually think that I may be onto something with this, but we'll revisit that later. The next morning, Jen is surprised by two men with guns standing outside the property, revealed to be friends of Richard who arrived early for their planned hunting trip. Richard is upset by Stan and Dimitri's arrival because he doesn't want anyone to know he's cheating on his wife, but it looks like that secret's out. It was really at this point that I wrote down in my notes, "I am so scared for her," and we were just about 9 minutes into the movie. Nevertheless, the four of them seemed to have a lot of fun that night, hanging out by the pool, laughing and drinking and carrying on. Because I knew in a general sense where this movie was about to go, I could already feel the arguments coming in of, well, she shouldn't have dressed like that, or well, she shouldn't have been acting that way with them. Let me just say, let women have fun. One important detail to note from this evening is that Richard wants to hide the peyote from Stan and Dimitri, so Jen puts it inside her necklace for safekeeping. We're gonna want to remember that for later. In the morning, Jen wakes up and Richard is gone. She finds Stan alone at the breakfast table and he lets her know that Richard will be gone all morning, and I already feel like I could cry. Jen retreats to the bedroom to get ready to leave, only to be followed by Stan, who watches her undress. He comes on to her, claiming that she seemed into him last night, so she has no reason to say no now.
And yet you seemed to like me yesterday.
And then when she continues to refuse, Stan rapes her. I've put timestamps for the entire scene down below if you feel the need to skip over the scene entirely. I think what this scene does reflect really well, though, is the way that some men can turn on you in an instant when they don't get what they want from you. At one point during the attack, Dimitri walks in and sees what's going on and chooses to take a swim in the pool while they wait for Richard to get back. When Richard returns and realizes what happened, he seems very pissed off, like any sane person would be. However, when Jen asks Richard to call the helicopter to come pick her up and take her home, he responds by saying he's transferred a large amount of money into her bank account, which is a suspicious alternative. Jen insists, saying that she's going to tell his wife about the two of them if he doesn't let her leave, and he responds by slapping her in the face. Thinking quickly, Jen bolts, running out into the desert, pursued by Stan, Richard, and Dimitri. The first lesson that revenge teaches me is that I really need to get in shape, because I am in no physical condition to run for that far, that long, that fast. I'd be a goner. They all stop at a dead end on the edge of a cliff with a huge drop. I was getting nervous that she was going to jump in order to get away from them, but that would kill her, so there's no way she's doing that. And no need to jump, because Richard has come to his senses and is calling the helicopter to come get her until he fucking pushes her off the cliff. Oh my god! I think this really sets the overall tone for revenge in the way that it doesn't hold anything back, especially including the gore, like we see with the tree that impales Jen through the torso in her fall. I was really stunned by this because I just could not fathom what she was going to do after this. The men leave her for dead, saying that they will come back with the car to retrieve her body after they dispose of her belongings. Of course, not before Richard calls his wife and speaks to her in a tone that is so level it is terrifying.
Ouais, tout va bien. Et toi, raconte-moi.
Things do not go according to the men's plan, however, as we see Jen wake up, albeit still hemorrhaging blood, due to the fact that she is impaled by a tree. I don't know if I treated that with the gravity it deserved before. She is impaled through the stomach by a tree. Looking around at all of her fallen belongings, like her earring, her iPod, and her lighter, all bright pink in an overt display of her aggressive femininity, she grabs the lighter, and in the first of oh so many incredible badass moves, she sets the tree on fire in order to set herself free. How did she even think to do that? She is on another planet. Now, you know that I like to warn you about any upsetting thing, including blood and gore, but the fact of the matter is she's gonna have a hole through the middle of her for the rest of this movie, so content warning for blood? Luckily, Jen is free, but unluckily, she can hear the men returning, and we are treated to a delightfully tense sequence of Jen trying to drag herself out of view, and she gets there with not even a second to spare. The men peer over the cliff to find nothing there but the charred tree, and I gotta admit, it is pretty satisfying to see them shit their pants like this. Stan seems hesitant, saying that maybe she hasn't bled out yet and they should get help for her. And I'm just saying, that feels pretty rich coming from Rape Guy over here.
On dit que c'est un accident. On fait jouer les avocats. Ils trouveront un truc. Ils trouvent toujours un truc.
Richard doesn't even entertain that thought though, because although he seemed like a perfectly nice guy to begin with, turns out he's a monster. It can happen, and thus begins the cat and mouse game that takes up the majority of the runtime of Revenge, with Jen severely wounded and wandering through the desert trying to evade these three men who will kill her with zero hesitation. Night has fallen by the time the men find a steady trail of Jen's blood that they begin to follow in order to track her. But because Jen is too smart for that shit, the trail abruptly stops at a river, and they're forced to split up if they want to find her. And sure, maybe it's reductive of me to say, but at this point, I'm just so excited for her to kill all of them. We spend an uncomfortably long amount of time with Stan before he sets off, and it took me a bit to realize that he's waiting for the car to heat up. And there's just something that is so sick about the care that this man takes to ensure his own physical comfort before he drives away to murder the woman he raped earlier that day. Just a fantastic detail. Jen pulls herself out of the river, and do not worry, she still has an entire tree branch going through her. She finds Dimitri relieving himself in the river and sees the opportunity to take his gun, which he has left to the side. Unfortunately, the gun isn't loaded, and Dimitri knocks Jen down, saying he's not stupid enough
Who will let his rifle loaded, lying around for you to touch?
which feels somewhat telling in the context of this film. Dimitri nearly drowns her, but never one to be taken off guard for long, Jen takes his hunting knife and stabs his eyes out. And like, not just a little bit either, she really stabs his eyes out.
I'm in love, love.
Now maybe this is just me being extra or gross, but to me, his wounded eye sockets kind of resemble the stars that are on her earrings, and if that's what's going on, I think it's very cool. Now, I know there's a fair amount of people who don't enjoy rape revenge movies at all, because they don't find it incredibly satisfying, or they find it reductive for a woman to have to enact the same level of violence as her attacker in order to reach inner peace. And that's totally a fair standpoint. Like I said, I don't watch a lot of it personally. The only ones I'm really familiar with are, in a sense, Jennifer's Body, which is a movie that I love, and Promising Young Woman, which is a movie that I don't love. And even with just those two, I know there are folks out there with the entire opposite opinion from me. And that's fine. What I'm trying to say is I don't think there's a right way to engage with movies that deal with these themes, and I personally find it very empowering when she gouges this man's eyes out. What can I say? After making sure Dimitri is down for the count, Jen snatches up his stuff and rides away on his bike? ATV? I don't know. This thing. Finding shelter in a cave, Jen now embarks on what is the goriest and probably the most infamous part of revenge. She decides that this tree branch has been lodged inside of her for long enough and it needs to go. But how could she ever rise above the immense amounts of pain she'll be in to effectively perform this kind of operation on herself? Cue Chekhov's peyote. That's right, we knew we'd be seeing this again. Jen is flying high and not feeling any of the pain one normally would from carving into the flesh of her stomach enough to safely remove the branch. So now the branch is out, but she still has a giant gaping hole in the middle of her, and does what any of us would do in this situation, and flattens out a beer can, holds it to the fire, and uses the scorching can to cauterize her wound. It's First Aid 101, right? Yeah, it's gnarly, it really makes my skin crawl, and it's incredibly badass. Taking a break from that, it is time to catch up with the men who are occupying themselves by peeing on spiders. I mean, alright, I hate spiders as much as the next person, but dude, relax. The fun quickly ends, however, when Stan gets startled by Dimitri's corpse floating up to the surface in a shot that made me whisper scream, "This is amazing!" I loved this reveal so much. Stan is distraught, and I now repeat, aw, rape guy feels bad, and Richard is entirely unfazed, solely focused on tracking down Jen and killing her. Jen wakes up with the eagle from the label of the beer can fucking branded on her stomach. Or at least we think she wakes up, because in reality, she's in a horrific nightmare loop. I'm not going to spend too much time on this scene because as a dream sequence it is pretty inconsequential to the plot, but I will warn you that it is very gory. Let me say content warning for pretty much everything from rape to maggots, as well as a repeat of that peachy ass line. See, I knew it would come back. The nightmares repeat, with the men appearing to kill her over and over again. And I will say, they got me on that first one, but once I realized what the deal was, I was just antsy for it to be over. Once Jen is awake for good, she emerges from the cave, allowing us to see her fully decked out for some murder, in one of the many sweeping, lingering shots of her partially clothed body that are present in Revenge. Through her binoculars, she sees something glistening in the distance that turns out to be a reflection from Stan's mirror. And let me just say, I love the fact that literally his narcissism is what gets him killed. The men have once again split up, meaning that Jen will have to take them out one by one, and at this point I honestly couldn't decide who I wanted her to save for last. She goes after Stan first, perched behind a rock, ready to take him out. I was worried for a minute because I really didn't want her to shoot him from afar. I wanted him to be really afraid. Turns out I get my wish though, because she just wounds him with her first shot and gets up close and personal to do the rest. It's a pretty extended chase scene where it is also revealed that she has been barefoot this whole time, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Now there is another trail of blood to follow, this time belonging to Stan. But realizing this, he kicks off his shoe and uses his sock to staunch the flow of blood from his shoulder. Way too much barefoot nonsense going on in this movie, the dangers of which are demonstrated when Stan steps on a piece of broken glass, slicing the bottom of his foot open. I'm gonna be real. There's way too much business with this foot, with him pulling the glass out and pinching the skin back together. It goes on forever. And it's awful, but feel free to watch it on your own time. Stan stumbles back to the car with the intent to run Jen over. Jen is momentarily unable to hear the car coming because Stan had previously blown off her earlobe, including her cute star earring, but he is still unable to get the upper hand on her, and she kills him with a single shot to the head. Jen takes the SUV and drives us into our finale with her sights set on Richard. This final scene is a bloody, beautiful mess, and I'm just going to be going over the highlights here, so please check this one out on your own if you feel like you can stomach it. Richard is back in his absurdly beautiful home, and we see him call the helicopter to come get him, and now he's got 30 minutes to kill, so he unwinds by taking a nice hot shower. Isn't he just the worst? Although I do find it amusing that now we get to see his little peachy ass, which I will not be showing because this video will get taken off of YouTube, but go watch Revenge, you can see his peachy ass. However, his peace is interrupted when he hears a suspicious noise, so he proceeds to traipse around his house fully naked with a shotgun, trying to find Jen, who has 100% made her way into his house. And I promise I am not saying this to poke fun at this man's body, but I do find it very funny the way he tries and fails to cover up his penis multiple times. Let's just say it makes a few appearances. Continuing his naked surveillance, there is a truly excellent fake-out scare where we hear a woman's voice, but it turns out to just be an infomercial on the TV.
Hi guys, if you haven't heard of the hottest website,
I love seeing this man be scared. We are all done with fake-outs though when Richard turns around and sees Jen standing right outside with a shotgun aimed at him. I cheered. She shoots him right in the gut, and he writhes all over the place, including his perfect white couch and his perfect white rug. He makes a real mess out of things. This brings us to our best blood trail yet as Richard tries to slither away from Jen and hide. The interior of his home is like a maze in its setup, almost like he wants people to get lost and trapped in there. So as good as this blood trail is, it's hard to know exactly what corner he will be hiding behind. It's so scary. I would almost say just let him tire himself out and he'll have to die of blood loss eventually, but no, I want to see Jen destroy this man. He almost gets her while hiding behind a blind corner, which includes one of my favorite shots of the whole movie. My favorite shot of the whole movie. But just in time, Jen sees his blood spreading across the floor, giving away his spot. I know that I've already done a content warning for blood, but I have to reiterate the amount of blood used in this movie is out of control. Richard tries to stop it by cocooning himself in saran wrap, but we all know that stuff is shit. Although I do have to say, the people in this movie are so creative with their wound care. Richard is all wrapped up and ready to continue his chase in his literal house of horrors. I actually got dizzy watching them go round and round like this, but the tension is exquisite. I have written down in my notes that I needed someone to cartoonishly slip in the puddles of blood coating the floor, but I immediately followed that with "no, not her" when Jen does the old slip and slide. Richard is able to knock her out and really thinks he's won when he grabs her by the neck and tries spewing his woman-hating bullshit at her.
But you had to put up a fight. Women always have to put up a fucking...
But Jen quickly cuts that off, and with one jab to his stomach wound, she finds an opening to shoot him one final time, and Richard is finally down for the count. Jen gingerly walks through all of the carnage and makes her way back out to the pool. She turns her head as we hear the helicopter arrive and the credits roll. And that's Revenge. I was blown away by how much I loved this movie, and I think it is so worth the time to check it out. Now, okay, does it seem very unlikely that she would be able to run around the desert for hours with a literal tree sticking out of her? Yeah, but it's a movie. Where else can that happen? I'll be the first to say, Revenge is not going to be the movie for everyone, and that is so okay. I also think that in addition to the very overt, in-your-face physical violence enacted by Jen, there's also a lot of fascinating subtleties of violence in the interactions between the men and even how they behave when they're alone in ways that I found more effective than other movies that try to do similar things. Point being, I love this movie. But I'd love to hear what you think of it too. If you've seen it before, if you're gonna turn it on in 5 minutes, if the sheer amount of blood turns you off this movie, let me know. And until next time, remember, there's nothing to be scared of. Popcorn in my tooth.